And most guys would come home, and first thing they would do, notorious in the military, is buy a giant truck. And they would spend their tour, we call it their tour money, on a truck. They drop $25K on a truck cash, and that would be all they have to show for it, their entire tour. What did I buy? Investment property.
Welcome to the On Fire Podcast, Episode 6.
With your hosts, Matt
and Kellen. On Fire is a weekly podcast where we discuss financial independence, life hacking, frugality, minimalism, and living within your means.
Reviews. You're tired of me begging for stars and reviews, so why haven't you already done it? If you already did it, thank you so much, guys, but seriously, why haven't you shared our podcast on Facebook?
In today's episode, we interviewed Jeff Wybo. Jeff introduces a slightly controversial viewpoint regarding financial independence. As somebody who is essentially financially independent in his mid-20s, living in one unit of his triplex and collecting rent from another rental property while working the occasional shift with the Army, Jeff decided that he wanted more from life and soon decided to become a real estate agent along with some controlled lifestyle inflation.
Yeah, Jeff's approach to conscious consumption is really unique. A lot of people in the FIRE community focus on cutting expenses to the bone and avoiding lifestyle inflation at all costs. Jeff, on the other hand, is actively using it to challenge himself and as a way to trick himself into growing. And the life hacks he shared with us in regards to the Army were really thought-provoking. There are so many approaches to FIRE, and as cheesy as it sounds, I'm starting to really think that the only limitation is our imagination.
It makes me think about my own journey and makes me question whether my current expenses will change as the years go on. And even if they stay just as low, there's a very good chance that I'll continue working on income-producing projects well into retirement. So isn't there a good chance that I will retire later than I really need to? If we only need 70% of the passive income that we've built because we're still earning active income, then one should theoretically be able to either inflate their lifestyle safely or retire even sooner. This is all assuming I don't just spend 50 years golfing and binge watching Netflix.
Being in the FIRE community, we're so used to challenging society's preconceived notions that we can often become very dogmatic in regards to frugality. Until recently, I was that way in regards to spending on clothing. I just didn't see the point. But one aspect of my life where I've recently and consciously allowed my spending to inflate, mainly due to Jeff's influence, is my wardrobe and what I spend on clothing. Now, I'm still likely on the very low range in regards to what I spend on clothing compared to the average consumer, but I do see value in having better fitting clothing. It just results in more confidence for me. Admittedly, I could likely accomplish the same thing without spending more money if I spent more time at the same thrift stores where I used to buy all my clothes. But at this point, I'd rather save the time than the money to look better. As long as I'm conscious about the increased level of consumption, I'm okay with that. But let's just jump into Jeff's interview.
Welcome to the podcast, Jeff Wybo.
Hey guys.
Jeff is a real estate agent and investor in London, Ontario. He completed 2 tours to Afghanistan and is still active in the Canadian military. Jeff earned over $100,000 in his first year as a real estate agent and $200,000 in his second year so far, and is a major advocate for having a social media presence, as is made clear by his various Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, and recently YouTube accounts. So welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Welcome, Jeff. And so I think our first question is, we just like to kind of dive into people's backstories. So this is a segment we like to call Back to the Roots. So can you just walk us through your background and how you came to discover the idea of financial independence? Was it a book, a blog?
It would be many things, probably going back to elementary school and into high school, where even just people around me, and they'd make $200 and they'd go out and buy the newest PlayStation 2. Maybe I'm dating myself there, but and I don't know. I never wanted to spend my $200 on the PlayStation 2 the moment it came out, or the latest. Do you remember those like boom boxes people would had to have and all this stuff? I just seemed to bank my money back then, and I would referee soccer and get cash, and I would just bank the cash all the time, and I always saved it. I'd like to count my money in my room as a kid, that kind of stuff. And there were books that I started reading. And I know we'll probably get into it later, but there was this one book back in the day called How to Live the James Bond Lifestyle. So if anybody knows me, I'm a big Bond fan, but this wasn't about going to Russian embassy parties or anything like that, or secret missions. It was a lot of just lifestyle about how to take care of your money and how to behave in this. And it really kind of stuck with me going on in my career. So I basically just always had a money background, and I surrounded myself with money people around me that were interested in the same kind of stuff as me. And now I'm sitting here with you guys, and I think I've even gotten even further with money people around me. So basically, yeah, just saving my money and trying to spend it on important things. I don't really spend my money on anything frivolous, really, as much as people might think. We maybe consumables like food and drink, but nothing like I'm not going out to the mall every day and buying stuff. So
Well, even like, you have a nice car and you have good clothes, but like a lot of that's important for your job, right? Like for your, well, not job. I don't want to use that word with you, but yeah, for your entrepreneurship, like you don't want to be like showing up to clients with like an old rusty car or like it's raggedy clothes.
And I didn't have a car for about 4 years when I bought my first income property. I just walked everywhere. The only reason I got a car was because I became a realtor and they told me you need a car.
So walk us through what your lifestyle was like when you were living in your triplex, and in a lot of senses the word financially independent at that stage. Do you have any tips for anyone who'd like to emulate something similar for themselves today?
So basically, I was using the cash flow as income. So every dollar was very important of what I'd go spend because I wasn't making any other money elsewhere unless an opportunity came up. I wanted to be available. But I can remember walking down to the grocery store at 7:55 because at 8 o'clock they put a sticker on the chickens and they were half price, and I'd go buy that chicken for $5 instead of $10. So I was always looking for those deals back then when I wasn't producing more income as I am now. Pretty much I'd fix problems at the house as they'd come up, but I never even painted my own units. I never did anything the way that we're all kind of renovating now. I just kind of, it's working, which probably wasn't the greatest way to go about it, but it was the cheapest way to go about it at the time.
So I think something that's really interesting for a lot of our listeners is your approach to financial independence is a little bit different. So, you and Kellen touched upon it, that you essentially were financially independent living in this triplex, your first income property. So you essentially reached financial independence via house hacking, but then you kind of decided to become a realtor, and I'm using air quotes here, upgrade your lifestyle. So tell us more about kind of your decision towards conscious consumption.
I was getting a bit older and started dating my now wife, and she kind of she nudged me in a good way. I had to go get a job, basically. I had to go get a car. I bought another property, so I was kind of like, but I was still house hacking that one. And then it's taken me about 4 or 5 years to eventually this summer I'll be in just a single family house. So, I think you guys are going to get to it later, but like I came back from Afghanistan. I didn't know what I wanted in a job because every society was telling me I needed to go get a job. None of them were going to be as fun as traveling the world with guns, which I really kind of liked. So I struggled, and I thought I wanted an office job, and then that's not really what I wanted. However, realtor, I always thought down on realtor, actually. I always thought it was, if you're not doing anything, just become a real estate agent. And I was dead wrong. There's a lot of money to be made in real estate agent. And that all of a sudden, kind of with my wife, my brother, this telling me you should become a real estate agent. I did it and did it fast and then just hit the ground running. So
awesome. Yeah. And so one other thing I think we just kind of want to touch upon on this subject is the drive towards quality versus quantity in like a lot of your consumption, right? So, you do have a fancy watch, but there's a story behind that. You like backing yourself into a corner.
Right.
Do you mind kind of going on
sure.
that?
So I was at a job when I was 21 to 23, and I thought that was going to be the job for the rest of my life. It was going to be a job that paid me a decent salary, maybe all the way up to like $90,000 a year. I thought that would be perfect because that, with the people around me, that would have been maybe even above them. So that's what I thought was my max that I could do in life because I didn't go to school for anything, because that's the way that you were taught. You had to go to school to make money. And I got this job, but then the job, it was a contract, and they stopped my contract and didn't hire me for the salaried portion. And one Thursday I was unemployed. And the next day I picked up a contract with the Army, and that was able to get me some income right away because I just thought, I need money tomorrow. Like, I better get a job again. And Matt's asking about my watch. So that contract had ended, and I didn't know. I was 23 and didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And I was walking through a mall in Toronto, and I saw a watch that I always wanted, but while I had the job, I never decided I could afford that. And I, like you said, I backed myself in a corner. I pulled the trigger on the watch, which now kind of motivated me. It gave me a a bit of a thrill to own it because I always did want to own it. And I eventually got other opportunities, and I took the close protection courses with the military and was off to the States and training with the mercenaries there, and then off to Afghanistan. And all of a sudden I'm protecting some of Canada's top diplomats and generals of our country. And so I didn't care about losing that job all of a sudden the year before. And it was all kind of like I backed myself into the corners purchasing this thing so that I had to go find a way to make more income out there. And it was just like a life experience.
And so another thing our listeners may not be familiar with is Jeff's about to become a father. So first of all, congrats on that,
Thank you,
Jeff.
guys.
Congratulations.
So any thoughts on how are you going to try and pass along kind of your relationship with money to your future offspring?
It's a good question. I think just to start, I don't plan on overspending when they're 1 year old and 2 years old on all the different clothing or something. Hopefully we can get a lot of hand-me-downs. Hopefully only thing we're going to buy is maybe a stroller, and I think everything else should just be passed down. So hopefully we can save on that. They're 1 year old, they're not going to know what they're wearing, right? So we don't need to have all these different things, right?
Yeah.
So I just see other parents just going nuts on that sort of thing, and I've never wanted to spend my money on that. So
I think like kids can be expensive, but it's another one of those things that doesn't have to be expensive.
Exactly.
Especially like even if you want to give your kid a great lifestyle, it still doesn't have to be expensive.
Right.
It's more about experiences and learning and time
until
with family,
until they
friends.
hit hockey, and then you got to spend all the money on hockey. But I think just through actions, I think he or she will grow up seeing what I've done, and hopefully like taking road trips to the rental properties and pointing at them and telling them like this is how we potentially live the way we do now, not really showing them back and showing them how much hard work I had to do in the army before. Like now that I'm more successful now, there was a lot of sacrifice I had to do. So hopefully they will do similar. Maybe they will join the military. Hopefully they're not just getting a free ride at this point. So.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And so you kind of touched upon it earlier, the fact that you were kind of always frugal and focused on money to begin with. Is that something you learned from your parents, or how did that kind of develop?
Definitely my parents never overspent on anything. They would buy the non-name brand ketchups and mustards, and I would always be like, well, how come we don't have the normal one, when I was really young, right?
Yeah.
So they were always cautious, but they would be more like definitely like the On Fire community, because they had jobs, they only made so much, and this is where they were able to save. However, I think just from being in the military and meeting like-minded guys in there, then my money sense took over, because you get all walks of life in the military. The guys that got paid they can't wait till payday on Friday, and then they're broke by the next Friday, right?
Yeah, actually, that kind of brings to mind stories you've told me about kind of you on camp, or whatever the right term is, when you're on base, and the way some people immediately run to Tim Hortons.
Right. Oh, yeah. So, like, even when I was deployed, we were making a lot of money. Well, at the time, now it's actually pathetic that I went over for that money, but at the time it was great. And coffee we could make coffee in our little office, but you could also go down to the equivalent of a Starbucks and spend $4 at the Green Bean or something like that. And I was always like, why, if I'm over here in order to make money, why would I reinvest it into their local coffee shops here on the base, which is, it's all like those nicety things. The American bases will have KFCs and Burger Kings and all this stuff. And the soldiers, I don't know, they feel like they need that comfort food or that little taste of home. And I was always like, well, there's free food in the mess over here. Might as well just go eat that rather than spending $20 on a pizza while you're deployed. I don't understand that. Because you come home with eventually no money, or, the goal was to make money coming over here, not to
Exactly.
come home and have to come back right away. And most guys would come home, and first thing they would do, notorious in the military, is buy a giant truck. And they would spend their tour, we call it their tour money, on a truck. They drop $25K on a truck cash, and that would be all they have to show for it, their entire tour. What did I buy? Investment property.
So, being married, having a child, and working together with your wife, do you guys have any challenges when it comes to balancing your budget together? Are there any tips that you'd have for the audience on how you could do that better?
She's really good. She doesn't have to She doesn't buy anything really. She'll buy consumables and that's about it. I'll go get her a perfume. I bought her perfume on the way home from California, but she would never go out and buy that. So she's actually pretty good, as much as most people might not think that she is. And basically it's about controlling. We don't have to keep up with the Joneses. We can just do what we want. So you don't have to overspend because somebody else is. And we just say no to certain things. Everybody wants us to go to this thing and that thing. We'll just say no. Her idea is literally just staying in and watching Netflix and whatever. We don't have to go to the movie theater and spend $40. I think I barely go to the movies anymore, unless the Bond movie's out. Then I go.
And so were you guys on the same page from day one? Is that something that co-evolved? And was that important to you when you were originally a bachelor looking for a partner?
I think it's definitely evolved. She's seen what I was able to do with the rental properties, and really, to be honest, like, it's against most of the norm. You're supposed to go to school. You're supposed to go get a job. You're supposed to go buy a big house. That's kind of how she just always saw it. She was really always looking at potentially her older sisters or friends and family. And I was the guy who'd go over to her parents' house and be like, "Hi, I'm unemployed. I have a property," right? So where the other sisters and her brother-in-laws had jobs and all that were, they're doing stuff in the world, and I wasn't. I was just, I'm owning properties, and it just went against the norm of like the normal Canadian thing to do. Eventually she's evolved, and now even the family is starting to, maybe I'm getting some more respect now,
That's awesome.
And that wasn't their fault. It's just something that it wasn't in their ecosystem, right?
It's outside of their comfort zone, right? So many people, when they're presented with an idea or an option that's completely outside of the norm, completely outside of kind of their comfort zone, it almost feels like a judgment value at first upon themselves, right? Why don't they already have a real estate portfolio? Why haven't they been saving? But the thing is, in the financial independence community, we're all just trying to pull each other up. There's really not a sense of judgment or, a win versus lose. It's all win-win is what we're really focused on.
I find it so interesting because Jeff also runs a thing called the Wybo limo, which we could talk more about. But a lot of times when we talk about the idea of multiple real estate investors, like say 20 people walking through a rental property together, a lot of other people hear, "Oh, that's your competition. Why are you going through a property with other people you're competing with?" And that's just not the mentality at all with anybody in the financial independence community. It's all about working together and leveling each other up.
Oh, it's fantastic. Even like my clients who are now our friends, all of our friends, like Justin and Laura, will be like going to you guys for advice. And where was this when we were like younger, right?
And likewise, we're at the point now. I'm asking all sorts of people who have been doing it for less time. I'm asking all sorts of questions to them as well because they're doing things I've never done. And I think it's kind of vice versa for like Matt and I. I probably ask him 90% of the questions, but every once in a while,
absolutely,
I've got a little value to provide too. Like you learn quickly, and it comes quickly where everyone's able to contribute to each other. So do you have a new goal or a milestone? Now that you've kind of upgraded your lifestyle, do you have a new financial independence number? Do you think this is going to be maybe a moving target for yourself?
I can remember like just owning the triplex, and I always thought if I made $4,000 passively a month, I'd be happy. And then we even talk about this on the Cash Flow to Go show, that our goals change all the time. Because then I remember hearing that Matt Pichet's goal was $10,000. If he got to $10,000 passively, he'd be done, and like he's not going to do any more real estate agent stuff. Now for me, I am purchasing a new house, which the only reason I could do it was because of all my other house hacking. That's a goal. I've also been challenged to purchase a new car, a used new car from Graham Stephan. And these are just as simple as buying the watch just to push me to go find other business opportunities and potentially find more money out there, make more money.
I love the concept of backing yourself into a corner. It's like, if you have a deadline, a lot of times people are going to fill, like say something's due in a week, they're going to fill that whole week. But if it's due tomorrow, suddenly they'll find a way. And I think it's kind of similar. If you put yourself in a position where you need to get this done, you will get it done. And it shows what people are capable of when they're backed into a corner.
Absolutely. Any movie, there's a ticking bomb with the timeline, right? And then the action hero has to, make sure the bomb doesn't go off right at the timeline. If it was just, oh, the city might blow up, it's a pretty boring movie, right? But you get put back in the corner. You have to solve the problems. You somehow become a hero, and you can do it, right?
So talking more about kind of your military past, me and Jeff have discussed this a little bit, but I don't think we've ever done it on camera. But tell us more about kind of the idea of lifestyle hacking via the Army or military service. Any suggestions for those who may want to travel the world on the government's dime while gaining life experience and skills while still assisting their country?
Sure. So obviously I joined the Canadian military about 16 years ago and didn't really know really what I was getting into. But now, such an opportunity to travel. If you guys want to ever join, you're young, you got to go through your basic kind of training. After that, like, I'm not in the military police, but military police people can be put at embassies all over the world. So you could be like in Tunisia for a year, or London, England, or Paris, and they will pay you to be there and live there. Also, just from my job, I got to go to England, all over the USA, then obviously Afghanistan, Kuwait, and some European countries. I think we were in Germany once. But basically, there's tons of opportunities. I've never would have even seen Canada if it wasn't for the military, because I've been all the way up Whistler, climbing the glaciers, all the way to the East Coast, to Halifax. So, because really, Ontario, Southwestern Ontario boys, it's tough to get to another province. We're pretty stuck down here. So the military, it's a free way. They pay you food and they give you shelter over your head. You have to listen to their rules all the time, but it's not bad.
Yeah, it's a very interesting idea. And so just for those of our listeners that maybe aren't familiar, you joined the military through the Reservists. Is that right?
So I'm a reserve. I'm still a reserve. I've always been a reserve. I've gone full time when I'm deployed, but still as a reservist. Basically, that's a part-time soldier that trains 1 weekend a month and 1 weekday every week, pretty much, and they pay me. So when I was about 16 and you'd get through a weekend, I think I would have like the $200 or whatever it would be in change, and that was huge at 16 years old, having $200 every weekend while you're going to high school. Versus everybody that was going to McDonald's and working, they were working like 8-hour shifts, and then after the taxes, they'd have like nothing pretty much. So.
Mm-hmm. And you're learning all kinds of interesting skills too. And so anyways, the reason I want to bring up the reservist aspect was just a lot of people think of the military as being like a lifetime obligation, right, where what's interesting is you can kind of have this be more situational oriented.
Absolutely. Like reservists, you're supposed to have another life outside of the Army, or the Navy or Air Force. You're supposed to have a job. It's perfect for teachers or police officers, that kind of stuff. And now real estate investors, I can kind of pick and choose what I want to do with the military. If we're going on a really cool exercise, we're jumping out of helicopters, well, I'll pick that one versus just more of a boring lecture weekend. So
awesome. It seems like you've always been willing to go against the grain in regards to the normal path. Do you have any suggestions for our listeners who may want to march to the beat of their own drummer, especially in the face of friends or family that may not agree with their decisions?
Yeah, good point. Like nobody really in my circle was joining the military, especially being a Byron boy. That just was unheard of, really. I think it just gets back to, like, I did it in one of my YouTube videos, like, take the shot, right? Like, don't always be... 10 years are going to go by and you're going to be like, oh, I wish I did that back then. I wish I traveled, or I can't wait till I get out of school, then I'm going to go travel, or everybody always has that as like one of their things. And I've been to 41 countries now, and I'm 33, which is not bad for a Canadian, when like a European can quickly bounce around like Europe, but for a Canadian, that's not easy. And they kind of getting in from the last question too, like there's even military ways. I don't think I've ever told you guys, but we can just drive to one of the Air Force bases and sit standby and fly on a plane right to Europe for like no dollars. I'm pretty sure you just need a leave pass. So there's all these hacks in the military you can do as well. If you read all our rules, they'll pay for you to go. You just hop on a plane, you wake up in Germany, and then you gotta catch the plane home from Holland maybe. But
and so, how do you get comfortable with the idea of ready, shoot, aim? Like what's a suggestion for our audience?
It's kind of like, again, maybe backing yourself into a corner, but I don't know. It could be a personality thing. Maybe you're never going to gain these goals if you don't take these shots. So you just got to go for it. I know we can quickly relate to real estate. Like, it's hard to sign that dotted line and pull the trigger, right? But after a while, like, you do it. And if you have a community of these like-minded people around you, that's a lot easier. I didn't have that back then, and I don't think you guys necessarily did it as well.
I was lucky enough to kind of start with like a pretty decent support group. Honestly, like we started up the London on Fire group, and that was right around the time that I was just getting going. So I was lucky enough to start with a good support group. But like, I'd be lying if I didn't have some fear that I had that analysis paralysis where, you know, all I'm doing is analyzing properties or like looking at opportunities and not ever pulling the trigger. So yeah, the value of just like, you know, if you find yourself going in circles and like you just like, maybe the reason you're not going ahead is just because you're just not taking the shot. Like, you know, you've probably analyzed it enough. Maybe now's the time to just start.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point for me to jump in too and plug the London on Fire community. Honestly, I'm so jealous that this didn't exist when I first started reading online blogs and books about early retirement and financial independence. For the longest time, I kind of felt like a lone wolf, just kind of running without a pack. And now all of a sudden, we have a giant pack here in London, Ontario, which is just amazing.
And I can honestly say for myself, I wouldn't be where I am right now if it wasn't for the people I've met and the group that we've had around us. The amount I've learned from people, the encouragement I've had from people, it's unbelievable. And if you don't have something like this in your city, either start your own or go to a city nearby or just search harder, because there's other people out there like you that want the same support group and that want to feel like they're not a lone wolf.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you guys don't know how lucky you are to have this right now. I maybe had like one friend I could call back then, but nothing like you can bounce questions off 10 different people at a Tuesday night meeting.
It's amazing.
So. It really is. And so maybe switching gears here a little bit, we have a segment called Spreadsheet Junkie. So do you track your net worth? Do you track your expenses? Do you budget? Kind of how do you approach money?
I used to do it, and then it was do tracking like everything, and then I felt that was taking up too much of my time. And a lot of it is more of a gut feeling now. I kind of know when I'm overspending in certain areas. I don't know if that's going against the grain on most people, but I just felt that I was spending too much time really nitpicking over like $1 to $5 when I should have been using that time to go make $10, $15, $20 rather than spending all that time worrying about the $5.
And so I think this kind of circles back to our conscious consumption question, where it's really about figuring out what's your time worth, and you're a lot bigger on outsourcing than maybe a lot of people in the fire community are used to.
Right, and a lot of you fire people in the community, potentially they have a 9-to-5 job, so you guys kind of need to budget and save the money because you're only going to make a certain amount of money annually, whereas I can spend strategically in order to produce more money in business because I'm running a business. Most people in the fire community are just an employee, from what I understand. So.
Yeah, all over the place. A lot of people are working their full-time day job and then working on a side hustle, so that their evenings definitely get filled up. And if you start analyzing your time and what it's worth and figuring out what things maybe are worth outsourcing, if you can make more money in that time doing something else, maybe it's worth outsourcing that task and working on something that's more profitable.
Exactly. So yeah, if you are in the community, but you have a side hustle in the evening, but then something's pulling you away from doing that side hustle, you're going to have to really look at it. Like, should I be spending more time on my side hustle or saving money over at the grocery store or something like that, or whatever?
Like, yeah, are you going to wait in line for an hour to save $2 on something that's...
There's now a click and collect or something, and you can order all your groceries online, and then for $3 more, they'll bring it out to your car. And so maybe people will think, well, I could have saved the $3 by going in, but by going in, maybe you're buying 4 more bags of chips or something, and you never know, right?
Right.
Actually, that's a great point.
So on that note, on the note of like buying chips and that kind of thing, do you have any guilty pleasures that maybe you are okay with spending a little more on, even if it's not necessarily profitable for you?
Food wise, no. I think drink wise, yeah, I'll buy certain alcoholic drinks for my house, but nothing too crazy. Like, I don't buy a case of beer every weekend or something like that.
And it doesn't have to be food related
okay.
or drink. Yeah, just anything in your life that maybe you are okay with spending a little more money on, 'cause it's worth it to you. Occasionally,
I'll be buying certain clothing here and there. I I have a collection of blue shirts pretty much. So, my wife says I need some more color, but a lot of everything I buy is dual purpose because like you were touching on earlier, I can use it for work. It's good. I'm a real estate agent. I got to look good at an open house, right? So
seems to all lend hand in hand, like getting nice clothes. It kind of also relates to your James Bond.
James Bond's been a big part of my life. Not just owning the DVDs or anything like that. It's given me the opportunity to travel, network with people all around the world. I could couch surf at any people's house. When we went to London, England in 2015 for the Spectre premiere, I stayed right on the Thames with my buddy James there in his spare bedroom. So I saved on the hotels the whole week pretty much. So just bought him dinner one night. That's about it. And he just would rather me be there and hang out with him. So
yeah, that's awesome. I think it's really interesting how you've taken what a lot of people would consider to be a very expensive, high cost of living lifestyle and found a way to really subsidize it through frugality as well as just kind of strategic focusing on where and how you're spending your money. So recently, Jeff and myself went and visited Graham Stephan in LA. And we couch surfed at Graham's. So a trip that easily could have cost us thousands and thousands of dollars really cost us $1,000.
We didn't even really feel the cost of that trip, really. And I'm good at couch surfing probably from the army days. Like we would have to sleep on anything, right? So I don't care. Like if it's a couch or if it's a floor. Like I think this is embarrassing, but you found me on the floor the one day. I fell off the mattress on the blow-up mattress, but whatever. Like I'm in the army. I'll literally just need your backpack and anywhere to sleep, right? And you can sleep in train stations, airports, whatever, on planes. So
yeah, awesome. And so we've touched upon it already, but you're a well-known James Bond fan.
Yeah.
But any tips for our audience on how to look like 007 without breaking the bank?
Yeah, absolutely. I know on YouTube, the Bond Experience, David Zaritsky out of Pennsylvania, he runs a couple of his episodes are the Frugal Bond, and maybe Bond has a certain suit, but he'll find the one that's at not Walmart or anything, but like more of a knockoff version or a tie that looks similar or the polo that looks similar, and you're not spending Tom Ford money on $1,700 for a sweater when you can buy the same sweater for $85 that looks pretty much the same, and nobody's gonna say, oh my God, your $1,700 sweater looks amazing at a party versus the $80 sweater, right? So
well, and another one that you kind of brought up to me that dressing nicely isn't something that necessarily comes natural to me, but Jeff's been rubbing off slowly. But the idea of buying an off-the-rack blazer or jacket and going and getting tailored,
absolutely,
that to me blew my mind.
Oh,
it just never crossed my mind.
Yeah, it's the easiest thing. Like they're obviously promoting to sell their suits and get them all custom made and that. But if you just bought one off the rack and then brought it to your tailor for $50, you're gonna look like $1 million for cheap, really. So
like the quality of clothes might not be there, but the fit will look really good, right? And if you take care of it.
And let's be honest, nobody really knows what brands you're wearing, really. Like
exactly.
And take it from me, like I buy some of the high brands and nobody's like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. So if you can skimp on it, go for it. Nobody really knows what your jackets are designed, who designed it, right?
Thanks for being on the show, Jeff. And before we wrap it up, we always like to get our guests to ask the audience a question. So do you have any questions for the audience?
Okay, more of a actionable question. Just basically like, how are you making an extra buck today? So are you just sitting at home on the couch right now listening to this, or are you multitasking and running your online business right now?
So to answer Jeff's question, jump over to the London on Fire Facebook group. We'd love to hear kind of what side hustles you guys are doing, how you're going to make a buck today. And otherwise, Jeff, how can people find you on the internet?
Instagram, Jeff Wybo, Snapchat, Jeff Wybo, YouTube, Jeff Wybo, Facebook, Jeff Wybo Real Estate.
And so that's JEFFWYBO for anyone that's listening. And otherwise, you can also catch us every Friday. Me and Jeff go live on the Cash Flow To Go show at 5:30 Eastern Standard Time on my YouTube channel. And we just kind of answer your questions about real estate investing as well as being a realtor.
Yeah.
So thanks again for sharing your fascinating story, Jeff.
Yeah,
thank you.
So much,
thanks,
Jeff.
guys, for having me. It was awesome.
Thank you.
That was great. And Jeff brought up some really interesting points.
I really like the idea of backing yourself into corner and almost forcing yourself to live up to your potential.
Absolutely. It's a great way to keep challenging yourself. If you're not under stress, you'll never grow. And speaking of personal growth, be sure to check us out on London on Fire's Facebook page, meetup.com, and onfirepodcast.ca.
And make sure to tune into our next On Fire podcast.
Thanks for listening. This is Matt.
And Kellen, signing off.
And until the next episode, remember, being normal, buying stuff doesn't make you happy, and always remember what Jim Rohn said.
If you're not willing to risk the usual, you'll have to settle for the ordinary.